Great. Hello, everybody. So, my name is Tom from the Digital Poverty Alliance. I lead on our policy work. So, the DPA is a charity that aims to unite a broad range of organizations committed to ending digital poverty once and for all. And we're really excited to be presenting this webinar today. So the focus is going to be on bridging the digital divide in the Southwest. So we know that the digital divide is a really urgent and serious issue that needs resolution. And we're going to hear from some great organizations and experts on how we can close that gap and bridge the digital divide. So we'll be hearing from Annie from Tech4Good South West around some of the great work that they're doing to unite a broad range of organizations. And we'll also hear from Chris from Meshi about some of the amazing things they're doing in terms of the provision of a decentralized Wi-Fi network to allow individuals and businesses to connect to the internet. So in terms of the agenda today, we're going to give a bit of an overview in terms of what we mean when we talk about the digital divide and offer some ideas about how individuals and organizations can help to bridge the gap. I'm also going to give a bit of an overview in terms of the Digital Poverty Alliance. Then we're going to hear from Annie, then Chris, and there'll be opportunities at the end for Q&A. Just in terms of housekeeping, so please do use the chat functionality to ask any questions throughout the webinar, or if you have any comments, please do input those in the chat function. I think also we are happy to share the slides from the webinar with people today. So those will be circulated to you in due course. Next slide, please. Great. So just to briefly give a bit of a recap in terms of what we mean by the digital divide. So the definition that the DPA adopts is the inability to interact with the online world fully when, where, and how an individual needs to. So our definition is quite broad because it focuses on individual need, what individuals require in order not just to get access to the internet, but also to benefit from that access. And I think here a useful conception is thinking around the three levels of the digital divide. So firstly, you have access, and obviously access is very much contingent on affordability, which in the context of the cost of living crisis is very pertinent. But then you have the second level, which is the skills that people need to actually utilize the internet and utilize technology and online platforms. But then you have the third level, which I think is most consequential, which relates to the degree to which individuals can use technology to actually deliver tangible economic, social, or cultural benefits. And I think that if we're talking about, how tech can really be a force for good, it really is around that third level of how technology can create opportunities for people, help get people, say, into employment, learn new skills, and be able to, increase their prospects and increase their life chances. Could I have the next slide, please? So in terms of who is affected by the digital divide, it is a broad range of people. I think that very often there's a conception that it's something that affects only the older generation. And while we do tend to see greater rates of digital exclusion amongst, say, the over 75s, it affects a much broader range of people. So it affects children, it affects people with disabilities. Obviously, geography plays into this in terms of people in rural areas, people who maybe don't have English as their first language. So I think that when we're looking at the issue of the digital divide, it really is something that spans across society and affects so many people. And I think that this really underscores why there is such a pressing need to really grapple with it and to end digital poverty once and for all. Next slide, please. So there are three essential pillars of what we think about when we talk about digital empowerment. So the first is technology. Obviously, affordability plays into this, but also the degree to which people have appropriate devices. So, for example, we know that about 20% of the population may only use mobile data and mobile phones to access the internet, which obviously is great for some functions. But if you're thinking about things like, for example, applying for jobs, writing a CV, mobile phone isn't going to be sufficient necessarily. So it's also the degree to which people have a device that is suitable to meet their needs, whatever those needs may be. Then, in terms of digital skills, there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done to make sure that everybody has digital skills. Um, there's I think the one of the best surveys is the Lloyd's Digital Consumer Index, which finds about 10 million people in the UK can't do all of the foundational tasks as part of the essential digital skills framework. So there's a massive skills gap in terms of making sure that everybody has those competencies to be able to use technology effectively. Then finally, there's also the connectivity piece, and there's, I think, issues in terms of obviously the reliability of internet connectivity, the speed of internet connectivity. So there's no doubt that, say, in the last sort of 10 years or so, great strides have been made in connecting more and more people. So activity is proceeding at pace in terms of, say, full fiber rollout, but it's certainly the case that geography is a massive determinant of connectivity reliability. And I think the affordability aspect is also really pertinent here, because you have things, for example, like social tariffs, which are a way to provide people with discount broadband packages if they're in receipt of certain benefits. But there are, I think, longer term concerns about whether social tariffs are really sustainable. I think they're part of the solution, but maybe not the whole solution. Next slide, please. So in terms of technology, we know that about 7% of the population experiences device poverty. And we know from some of the data that's been put out by Ofcom that about 36% of the population have cut back spending on digital access. I think something that's absolutely key here is ensuring that local areas have an ecosystem of partners who are able to help to supply devices to people that are in need. And I think certainly in terms of a lot of the work that we at the Digital Poverty Alliance do, we're very involved in providing families or individuals with devices. But there's certainly the case that the demand out there always exceeds the supply. And so there is a real need there to make sure that everybody, no matter what their circumstances are able to access an appropriate device. Next slide, please. And then in terms of digital skills, I think building on some of the points I was making earlier, that there is a real skills gap when it comes to those essential digital skills. I think that certainly you have maybe a sort of prioritization towards maybe higher level digital skills as part of our sort of national education ecosystem, which undoubtedly are important, but that's just sort of one piece of what is a an opportunity to ensure that the UK is really able to capitalize on some of these changes that are happening with respect to technology. Next slide, please. And then in terms of internet connectivity, again, big regional differences, and there are, as the column on the right shows, a range of options out there for people to access connectivity, either through schemes operated through local libraries. The Good Things Foundation National Data Bank, for example, is a major initiative, as well as things like social tariffs and support provided by Citizens Advice. But obviously, the scale of the challenge is so great that always more needs to be done in terms of providing that support to people. Next slide, please. Great. So with that, I'll hand over to Annie from Tech4Good South West, who will give a bit of an overview of some of the great work that they're doing in bringing together a diverse coalition of stakeholders to really make sure that we can close the digital divide and everyone in the Southwest is included. Thanks, Annie.
Amazing, thanks Tom. And hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Annie Legge. I'm also part of Dot Project, which is all about driving digital resilience across the charity and social impact sector. And Tech4Good South West is really a community network all about driving technology for good, as it says, primarily focused in Bath and Bristol, but also really further southwest as well, and really trying to kind of grow a community around this. What we practically do is fundamentally, it's about driving awareness around Tech for Good. So surfacing stories of Tech for Good. We have a podcast, a newsletter. We've got quite an active LinkedIn group as well. And it's really about trying to show across the community where there's not only amazing Tech for Good solutions being developed by our tech sector, but also what are the challenges around technology? What are the challenges that some of our charities and community businesses are facing, but also obviously our communities and populations? We host a number of training and learning events, and really it's also about sharing insights and knowledge across the community as well. And increasingly for us, it's around convening needs with skills. And certainly this year, we've been really focused on community activation. I've seen a real increase in demand almost from our local tech sector, or certainly individuals saying, how can I get involved at a local level? How can I bring my skills and my experience and expertise to really help the communities? And I really feel that that's also been a legacy in a good way from COVID, is actually this kind of real appreciation that we all need to support communities. So Tech4Good South West is a sort of umbrella network, really, and we have increasingly a few niche networks like Green Tech Southwest, Ethics in AI, that really starting to grow in the Southwest. So just a little bit around the digital divide in Bath specifically. At a glance, the population of Bath and North East Somerset, it's really strong, it's prosperous and healthy. It's a vibrant city. We have millions of visitors every year, but we actually have a relatively small population. The levels of unemployment are relatively low compared nationally, and educational achievement is generally really quite high. But in reality, we have a number of pockets of deprivation that really are in the top 10% of deprived areas in the UK. And in particularly in areas referred to as Twerton and Whiteway, which are less than 2 miles from the centre of Bath. And within those communities, we have 35% of children living in poverty, and that's reported in 2019. And what we're hearing now is that's definitely increased, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months. There are no wards in the city of Bath that has less than 10% of children living in poverty. We have 40% of children on free meals in just a small number of primary schools across the city. So poverty exists just meters from tremendous affluence in Bath. And I think that's what makes it really, really, really extreme, considering also often known as the Silicon Gorge, Bath and Bristol, with really high density of technology, skills and expertise. You can go to the next slide. So really, we believe as a network, but also as a wider group of stakeholders, that Bath should be and is the best placed city in England to address the digital divide. The number of organisations came together earlier in the year, organisations such as funders, local charities, but also our local council, the West of England Combined Authority, and other initiatives that individuals in Bath are part of more nationally, to say actually there are some great things happening in the city, but we don't all know about them, and they're often happening in silo. And what would it look like if we all came together and worked more collectively around that? So what we decided to do was a very active Bath Digital Festival that runs every year, runs for a week in July. We decided that that would actually be our commitment, that we would launch awareness around digital poverty during the digital festival. And we'd really do some community activation events as well to really show what might be possible if we come together as a community. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we practically did during that week. So at 9 o'clock, first session of the digital festival, we brought around 30, 40 people together in a workshop, around 3 hours or so. And we'd done some initial research and some interviews prior to the digital festival. But what we were doing was really trying to understand what the problem looks like in Bath, build awareness of digital poverty generally, but what's actually happening in our city. And then what do we know is happening already to address that? There are some amazing initiatives, but they are also operating in silo, and not everybody is aware of each other and the amazing work that's being done. And that session was really practical as well. There was a lot of listening to each other, but then there was also actually, if we take some of these challenges, what could we do about it with our different perspectives and our skills and expertise? And one thing I really noticed during that session was the energy and the real determination to actually, we can do something together. We've all come together in this room with our different skill sets. But what I also noticed was people were really generally and genuinely unaware of the scale of the problem that Tom, particularly, you've just been speaking to. So we had that session, and then we moved straight into a hackathon. So we've been doing a big call out to our tech community to bring together some designers, developers, digital experts to see what we might do in 3 days as a community, as a tech community, to address some of the particularly solvable challenges that we saw come out of that mapping session. We rapidly came together on that Monday afternoon, a quick getting to know each other, but importantly to understand each other's skills and motivations. We were asking people to give up their time away from their sort of day jobs and their daily lives to actually participate in this kind of three-day event. So what we did was we focused on the challenges that had come particularly through the mapping session, and then we divided into a couple of teams to work on a couple of different solutions. So the first solution was around connectivity. So Tom's just been talking about this as well, a real challenge around connectivity that really exists here in Bath as well. And particularly challenging for people to understand actually what broadband package do I need, firstly, but also how to navigate an overwhelming amount of information that most definitely doesn't surface the cheapest packages, but most definitely doesn't surface where there are social tariffs available. So for those people claiming credits, universal credit and other benefits, there are packages available from the telcos to support those individuals. And also, where are there opportunities to have free connectivity, particular spaces, but there are also some national programs that are available to the communities. You can go to the next slide, please. So what we did over those 3 days, this one particular group was really focused on actually creating a working prototype, which I still can't believe they did that in that amount of time, but created a mobile website or a mobile app. And again, as we just said, if you have connectivity at all, you're most likely to have it by mobile. So it was really about creating a mobile first solution that was really simple, quick, intuitive, and really important to kind of strip out any technical jargon, because we also really could see that in any kind of explanation of a broadband package, it's just full of jargon that actually you don't necessarily need to know. So the first step in this app, if you can just, go to the next slide, thank you, is to put in your postcode. So again, what we could also see was that actually what's available to you in your region is almost one of the last things that you're shown when you go and look for different broadband packages. But first step, putting in your postcode. The second step is actually what budget do you have, a monthly budget to support your broadband access, and are you claiming any of these social benefits that might make you make social tariffs available to you. And the third step around how many people are living in the household, and generally what are they using the internet for? Is it accessing sort of film, social media, or potentially wanting to use devices for school, for example? And once you'd put in all of those 3 sets of information, then what the app would do was kind of do obviously a lot of analysis in the background to then display the different packages that are available to your particular selection criteria, in particular, obviously showing the social tariffs. That was one of the things that we were really, really focused on. We also created, another sort of screen that could potentially then show people what was also available in our community, so based in Bath, that might be interesting to you if you are trying to get connection, where there may be some sort of community support networks, but also, as Chris will talk about, Meshi as an example is an example of actually a live project here in Bath that's helping to get people online. The second initiative and prototype that was worked on was community, and that was really also focused on a non-digital solution. If you go to the next slide, which is actually paper flyers in its most simple concept. But actually one of the challenges that we really surfaced through the mapping session was actually, how do people know what is available to them, where there is support, perhaps to get a device, to get online, to actually have some support with maybe filling in information online. That's really siloed and really difficult to find. So actually go back to traditional paper-based, but important, this bit at the bottom on the flyer, which is about we need your help. So making it a kind of two-way reciprocity kind of idea is, you know, we need your help to find people that need support to be online or to support around digital skills. And then we can actually bring you where those initiatives are across the city and what's available. What we did was really also focus on where should those flyers go? So where are the people that need this information? So thinking about local notice boards, libraries, housing newsletters that go out every month. And some of those kind of community spaces were really actually fundamental to this concept. If you go to the next slide. And the idea being it's always about prototyping. So starting off with a really simple idea of having some physical flyers that have aggregated what's available locally, what initiatives are happening in Bath, and really kind of almost creating a database for that, and then actually distributing those flyers and then starting to get feedback on what else is available and starting to kind of really, really grow and build that over time. There was obviously there had to be a bit of a digital element to it, because we were a group of digital specialists working in a sort of hackathon. If you can go to the next slide. And what we also created was really a sort of dynamic map that you could actually start to log all of those like notice boards or community spaces across the city where we could distribute flyers to, and also where actually some of these initiatives might also be held as well. So start to really kind of grow knowledge across the city that starts to develop over time. So finally, on the Friday of the Digital Festival, we held a session to showcase those kind of live prototypes that I've just been talking through. But also it was about raising awareness at a regional and also government level. So we invited our Liberal Democrat, Weira Hobhouse, Julia Adamson, who's done a lot of work around digital skills for young people, and Fiona Dawson, who's part of one of our leading tech organisations based in Bath, and is a real campaigner around digital divide, is to really kind of bring the kind of stories of what is the challenge here in Bath, but also show what was possible in 3 days when you actually get people together and think about this kind of shared challenge. And one of the key outcomes for us from that is sort of we're really kind of promising to put the digital poverty agenda in the manifesto for Liberal Democrats locally. So that's just a real example, I think, for me, of what is possible in 5 days when you actually really focus on bringing this kind of multi-sector group of individuals and organisations together. And just the last point I wanted to make was yesterday, End Digital Poverty Day. And for us, it was really important to kind of get a date in the diary following the Digital Festival to show that this wasn't just going to be a sort of one-stop shop conversation, and that we were determined as a collective to really start to build momentum for this. So we reconvened cross-sector stakeholders, many that were part of those events, but also lots of new individuals as well, to come together and say, this is what's happening in Bath. These are some great initiatives that are happening, but also look what's possible in just a few days where we can do some things, and not necessarily always going to be digital solutions, but actually what can we do when we bring our ideas together. What we did was invite people to do lightning talks. We had about 7 lightning talks that are related to digital poverty in Bath. What are the ideas and what do people need help with? And then what we actually practically did was kind of filter those into, and we kind of had a voting system where we all sort of got behind 2 key ideas to say, actually, we're going to take this to kind of other committees and other kind of forums, I suppose, to really try and get some momentum around it. And we really were also saying this is a digital divide collective that we want more people to be part of. And we will build a focused and coherent plan for a digital divide collective. We will bring resources and capacity across the city. We have everything we need in the city. We just need to accumulate it and drive awareness for it, and start testing, iterating, and getting ideas out there in the community. And again, really trying to champion that Bath should and is the best place in England to address its digital divide. So I think for me, just a sort of final word, I suppose that really is a good example of where communities like Tech4Good South West, of which there are many across the country as well, are here to really try and actually convene this cross-sector of our community, and really kind of build a responsible Tech4Good ecosystem. And we did have a lot of feedback around, actually, I am inspired to take action. Let's do more of the same, but not just back in the digital festival. Let's continue that momentum. So I'm really excited about what's possible here. And as somebody said last night, this is just the context of digital poverty. We could take this model in anything really around community action. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share that today.
Great, thanks so much, Annie. That's fascinating, and I think a real testament to the power of collaboration and sort of creating those strong strategic partnerships that are really going to be impactful. We've had some great questions coming through the chat, but I think we're going to save those for the Q&A session. Now I'm going to hand over to Chris Thompson from Meshi to talk about his experience and Meshi's experience of helping to get the Southwest connected. Chris, thanks. Over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Guys, I'm sorry, can I run to my door real quick? I've got my kid home and the door is being pounded on. Sorry, I'll be back in like 30 seconds. Of
course, no problem.
Classic, isn't it? All right, back on.
So I wonder if in this interlude, that there's some questions from the chat, and one I think that's really interesting is what role does the government, either at a regional or national level, play in terms of your work in the Southwest, Annie? Had you been able to get a lot of support from the government, and how key are, for example, say local authorities or the combined authorities in helping you to deliver some of these projects?
Yeah, 100%. I think definitely right from the beginning, earlier this year, before we even kind of made the plan around the digital festival, it was about engaging those groups as well. We've had a lot of focus around a sort of digital plan as a combined authority across the west of England. So really engaging with those stakeholders as well. And what we've actually been able to do now, which will happen in a couple of weeks, is a couple of working groups from the Baines Council are actually coming together rather than sort of separately with a specific topic around digital poverty in Bath, and how can we actually bring some of these conversations together.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Annie. So I will now hand back over to Chris. Chris, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry about that, everyone. That was so typical, isn't it? Anyway, thanks for having me on, and just wanted to say, well, just really excited to be on a call with so many participants that are obviously just as passionate about dealing with this. Sorry, I just ran up the stairs. I'm out of breath. Dealing with this gigantic problem, and interested in learning more about it. Sort of seen Annie do her work over the last month or so, or probably 3 months now, and the momentum that you're gaining, Annie, is really exciting to see. And yeah, I'm really happy to be working with you more closely as well, so in the Bath area. So anyway, Meshi Wi-Fi, it's something that, okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about what it is first. It's a sort of a intelligent, secure wireless network that is decentralized, and it's designed to provide internet to, like, basically solely designed to eradicate or help eradicate the digital divide. That was its sole purpose for being designed. There's a lot of stats out there. I think a lot of people are aware of sort of 1.5 million homes without internet, a couple million homes near canceling their broadband because they can't afford it. We were at an event last night talking to head teachers about how they've got families and children trying to get online with unsecure secondhand phones, and things like that. And just it gets close to heart for me because I work with a few schools, and I see it firsthand as well, how you've got single moms trying to get their children online, and they can't because they can't afford. They've got a crappy 4G phone trying to get their kids on with devices, to be fair, that are provided by different, government bodies or whatever. But it's that internet piece that we wanted to resolve. So that's kind of why Meshy Wi-Fi was born. We got to work during COVID, built a device that we call a Meshy Hub. And that device, I don't have it with me. I actually left it in London last night to show you guys. But anyway, I gotta figure out what that is. But we are building 150 of them right now as we speak, and they're getting installed in about 3 weeks. But what they do is you can plug it into either your home or business or anywhere with an internet connection, and it will emit a wireless signal, a secure one, out onto the Meshy Wi-Fi network. And so you can then share as little or as much internet as you want onto that network. That then gets distributed out to people that need it, essentially. So it's a sharing network. It's secure. We put a lot of effort into securing it up and making it scalable. So it's literally plug and play. It links up and builds a mesh network. Um, and it's something that we thought we could do inexpensively for those families that need to get on the first rung of the ladder. We're not looking to compete with the big internet providers. We're looking to complement what they're doing already. We know that there's tariffed discounted services out there provided by them, but we also know a lot of the families and individuals can't afford those still, and so we want to come in at £5 or less kind of thing, just to sort of cover the cost of the device, really. And then that's basically allows people to get online, get back to work, get educated, whatever it might be. There's a lot of examples, and then maybe they can get onto the next rung of the internet ladder, right? So that's kind of what it's designed for. I guess our point for being on here today is we want to spread that message out to everyone. We want everyone to get involved. We all have unused internet at home. We have unused internet at our businesses. For example, when you leave to go to work in the day, or you leave your business in the evening, there's a lot of there's many examples of that. So we've built this network so it pools all together. People can get online that need it. And all we're asking is that you share. Everyone get involved, share. Another point to it is you get rewarded financially. So there's a recurring revenue model to it as well, much like solar panels. So you're sharing out of the goodness of your heart, but you actually do get compensated for that as well. There's a lot more to it, but that's the gist of it. And yeah, I'm happy to be on here. I think that's all I've got. But thank you, everyone, and yeah, have a good one.
Great, thanks, Chris. So I think now we're going to move to the Q&A session. So please do send through your comments or questions using the Q&A feature. I wonder, just to start, Chris, on the issue of social tariffs. So obviously there's been a lot of emphasis, I guess, on social tariffs as a way to help families that are struggling in the cost of living crisis. But I think at the last data from Ofcom indicated, I think about 5% of people who were eligible had actually signed up to one. So clearly, there's a lot more to be done to make sure that everybody is accessing connectivity that they can afford. What's your view on social tariffs? Is there a way in which they could be improved, or is it just the case of better promotion on behalf of internet service providers to make sure that more people are aware of them?
Yeah, I think the answer is both. A lot more effort needs to go into education and awareness spreading, and that's a lot of that good work is being. Well, I can see Annie's all over that with her work, and that just needs to happen across the nation. And it's a global problem, really. It needs to happen globally. But yeah, certainly, I think the tariffs, they're as low as a lot of the providers can do, because it does cost them money to provide internet. They have to pay for it. They're generally not going to sell that as a loss, but maybe slightly. And that, knowing what it costs, they are literally at cost. So commercially for them, it's not really a sustainable model. It's not, okay, scalable, but not sustainable. And we're already seeing examples of that. So it's coming up with this get creative, maybe unless the government starts to subsidize it more. But then, it's coming out of everyone's pocket then. So, which is fine. I think everyone's got a kind heart, but look, we've got all this unused internet. We're already paying for. Why not share that? And then, we're solving the problem. People are getting online, and everyone's actually offsetting their costs as well by doing so. So it's I think it's hitting a few problems. So that's sort of long answer there, but.
Great, thank you. Annie, there was a couple of questions in the chat around the theme of the sort of formality of partnerships and the issue of measurement. So how do you sort of decide what would be success, what good looks like? So I wonder if you could talk to that a bit as well.
Yeah, sure. We so as Tech4Good South West, we're a volunteer-run community. So we are not a sort of entity as such, although that is due to change quite soon in order to be able to sustain our own momentum. We've been running the network for about 6-7 years, so we have been sort of iterating over time. And I did answer one of the questions because actually in some ways, not having official partnerships almost kind of democratizes the relationships that we're trying to build. And in some ways they feel more organic, sort of more trusted and reciprocal. And I can't really sort of explain it more than that, but it feels like actually it's a sort of genuine commitment of time that people are kind of putting in place. And that may change as certain initiatives try to get obviously some kind of capacity and resources behind them. I can't remember the second part of your question.
So we were also thinking about so there was a sort of measurement aspect and the sort of formality of partnerships.
Yeah, so certainly on the measurement side, I mean, obviously we've always trying to evaluate the events and the progress that we're making as a community. Particularly around that digital festival week, we did experiment with various different types of getting feedback. It's always really tricky when people run out of the room at the end of a session. But one of the things that we did do, particularly on the mapping session, was actually interview a number of participants before at the end of the session and created time for that. And that was really, really insightful around obviously their learnings and what they got from the experience of being part of that. So we've done a full evaluation of the sort of digital festival work. And we hope that will really start to kind of build momentum for more people to get not just involved in the community, but involved in local projects like this. I think what we've done with focusing on the digital divide in Bath is what I hoped was also an example of where you can take a need in the community that you're living in, put a bit of energy behind it, ignite a little bit of action. And that could be across any topic in any place across the Southwest, related obviously to Tech4Good. So it was really kind of using this as an example where there was already energy, already momentum, and actually how can we build a collective around that. But it'll be really important to kind of build those metrics and that kind of measurement of actually the capacity that people and organizations are putting to this.
Great, thank you. So we've also had a question with respect to sort of UK corporates being able to get behind some of these projects and potential financial partnership. What has been the sort of reception from business in terms of supporting some of this work?
Yeah, really interesting question. So I think Maiden particularly, obviously FEE has got representation anyway as the Digital Poverty Alliance and a number of other initiatives. So I think that's is an example of where you also really need a champion within the business who is kind of looking beyond the business itself and looking at actually what's the community and social responsibility of the business as well. I think there's a lot to be done. I sort of sense that there are individuals within organizations that want to feel impactful in their work, in their business, but particularly at a local level. But I do believe there's a lot of work to be done around celebrating tech for good, celebrating actual social responsibility as a tech sector. I feel quite passionate about that, and I think there's still a lot to be done. What we hope to do through Tech for Good is kind of have that more potentially more of a membership model type approach to the network that really starts to kind of have an agenda around Tech for Good for the Southwest, and really encouraging businesses to be part of that and be part of that journey.
Very excellent, thank you. So Chris, we have a question in the chat to say that Meshi is very exciting, and whether you have any plans to scale across the UK.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's 100% what we plan to do. This month we're rolling out in Bath and Salisbury, mainly to overcome. We've already worked out the challenges with signal between buildings. So we've chosen Salisbury because it's flat, Bath because it's hilly, and we've got 75 devices going into each city, and it's just to make sure that we've sort of covered all our angles in terms of getting connectivity to where it needs to get to. And then yeah, we're talking with other organizations and councils and things like that in different parts of the country to do little pilots. And it's only a matter of time. You know, we've got the technology, we've got a way to scale it. So you know, it won't be long before hopefully we're sort of solving the problem across the country. And then the idea is let's get it out further than that. You know, I saw a comment from someone in South Africa on the chat. We're working with somebody in South Africa right now to get in that area. We're also working with somebody in Poland to get in that. And it's a problem in every single country. In Canada, where I'm from, I just came back from leave there, and it's a big issue there as well. There's loads of communities, same problem. So yeah.
Great, thank you. We've also got another question from an attendee asking, is the host of a Meshi network responsible for how people use the internet whilst connected to the network?
That's a good question. Yeah, and so the answer to that, the short answer is no. We've built the security around the device. So when you plug it onto your network, it creates a separate, it segregates your network from the one that's being used in a secure tunnel, and it kind of breaks out past the internet provider's internet. So it's completely segregated. Any traffic that goes through is essentially not even detectable, but you're not responsible for it, and it's not traced in any way. Therefore, sort of removing any responsibility. We have responsibility as a network to sort of track what's going on and make sure it's secure. And if there are any sort of bad actors on the network, we can track that. If enforcement needs to get involved, that goes back to us. So it's not even something that would even touch somebody else sharing.
Great, thank you. So we got another question. I think Annie, you might be able to help with this, but also Chris, I'd be interested if you have any thoughts as well, from somebody that are able to get SIM cards from Vodafone, but are unable to get any handsets. So mainly based out of Swindon, but are finding it very hard to actually get handsets for people that are facing digital exclusion. So any ideas on what the best route might be
for handsets or for getting? I mean, that is a problem. It's definitely a problem. There are organizations out there that are trying to get devices to people. I think there's a few links on this slide, but they're dotted around the country. And it's just, again, it's not all in one place, really. It's not easily accessible. So it does address that problem we're trying to solve. It's just getting it all into a place that people can find this information and they're getting the awareness out there. But yeah, I don't have a better answer than that, I'm afraid, because it's a problem we're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Annie, what do you think in terms of some of the work that you're doing? Have getting a hold of handsets been a particular challenge in at Bath and the wider region?
Yeah, I suppose we definitely, in the sort of digital festival work, we're also trying to explore where there are local initiatives that were particularly focused on devices, as in laptops for there's definitely some work around laptops for children and supporting laptops in schools, but actually nothing specifically around kind of mobile handsets that that I've been made aware of during that work. I think there are some national initiatives, definitely. But yeah, it's just another area to kind of research.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have another question with respect to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, they're a big focus at the moment in terms of a lot of organizations who are aligning their ESG activities to them. And I'm interested also the extent to which you see this sort of conversation now around social value being very, very important for a broad range of companies. How are they doing business in a way that's obviously ethical, but is upholding principles of good governance and good management. So I guess I put that out to sort of both of you in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but also sort of more specifically on the sort of social mission, I guess, of this work. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that at all. Annie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of it's really fundamental to kind of align to that, but also at the same time, we're also trying to see how we can create kind of more practical, hyper local based conversations that are also really about looking at our immediate challenges, and how that ultimately ladders up to the sustainable development goals is really important. And that's kind of part of, I guess, the theory of change around these kind of community networks, but at the same time trying to make it accessible. Some of the feedback that we did a lot of research into the community post 2020, when we kind of pivoted online from doing sort of traditional in-person events, and then took a break for a while. We did a lot of research back into the community to see whether it was viable for us to kind of continue, and it definitely it was, which is why we're still here. But there was a lot of kind of ask around, actually, can we do things locally? Can we do things more practically? I love meeting the people and talking to people, but I want to do more than talking. So I think it's also about kind of distilling those kind of bigger global goals into what is like local initiatives and local focus activity.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I wonder, Chris, sort of what are your thoughts in terms of sort of the sustainability and mission, I guess, of what Wi-Fi, what Meshi is trying to provide from a sort of resilient community sort of perspective?
Yeah, it's a sort of a broad mission. Like so from a community perspective, we realize that there's communities in everywhere, right? There's thousands of communities globally, and so we're trying to empower each one with this as well. So we've kind of the platform we've built will allow communities to talk with one another and come up with ideas and govern. We're building a governance piece into Meshi as well. So a lot of it will be governed by people and communities and sort of activists. We're trying to really decentralize it, and then looking at further out into different countries. We're already talking with consultants about getting other companies that are interested. They've got sort of CSR interests, corporate social responsibilities. They want to they need basically they have money to spend, and there's issues everywhere. So it's kind of like the nice thing we built the product to be scalable. You plug it in, as long as you've got an internet connection, it will do its job. Doesn't matter where on the globe, really. So yeah, that's kind of the way we're going with it.
Great, thank you. We have two more questions. So we have a question to say Meshi is hugely exciting, and we'd love to pilot it in South London. So maybe that's something to pick up offline. And we also had a question around whether, and I think Annie, this might be for you. You've had any engagement with Dame Martha Lane Fox, who's obviously been very engaged in this space and maybe might be able to provide some assistance. So I don't know if either of you would like to sort of come in on either of those 2 points.
Certainly around Martha Lane Fox, and obviously her work at Everyone is very well known to us. One of my colleagues in Project was at Everyone as well. So I think it is around that advocacy piece to those kind of key stakeholders, or I guess key voices. There are a number of Tech4Good communities across the country. A number of us founded a national network called Tech4Good Community Organisers, which was there to essentially support all of us running these kind of community networks, which is predominantly done on a volunteer basis. And that has a little pot of funding as well. And what we do is kind of come together on a monthly basis and an annual retreat to really kind of share and learn from each other. So I think that there is also this kind of wave of actually, the more that we have these communities, and what I hope is Tech4Good South West is, it was an earlier question around similar network in Cornwall. We've been trying for a while. A few people have got in contact and said, can you come down to Cornwall? Well, yeah, we can, and help get something going there. It's not about actually sort of owning the region as such. Is what we want to see is more and more little communities kind of set up that generally are responsive to the needs of their community. So what we have here in Bath and Bristol is very different to the groups running in London, very different to the groups running in Wales, for example. So it's all about responding to the actual communities in which we are.
Great, excellent, thanks, Annie. So I guess to sort of conclude, we've talked, I guess, a lot about the issue of the digital divide and how important it is. And I think that obviously the pandemic was, I guess, really a sort of a catalyst, a bit of a wake-up call for people to realize, if you don't have secure, reliable internet at home, that it has a range of impacts on people. So if we're thinking about this call, what can people do from a practical perspective? What advice would you give for individuals, organizations who are interested in contributing, but almost sort of don't know where to start? How should people get involved and get engaged to really take action to close the digital divide? Chris, I'll come to you first.
Okay, I think you start local. I mean, there's obviously the Digital Poverty Alliance, which has got a great resource online, and they've got a great forum piece that's in there, and you can get involved with a lot of people already getting involved to learn more about it quickly. But I think also on a local level, like Annie Legge's Tech4Good, and there's other organizations as well that have just a huge amount of resource to access and get educated. And then it's spreading that awareness, just getting it out to other people, reposting posts that get put out by yourselves, and just spreading it, because people need to be aware. Like, a lot of people aren't aware of it yet, and the pandemic did highlight it. But even then, I talk to people and they just kind of stare at me like, what am I talking about? Because it's just they don't see it, right? It's just not visible. So it's getting the awareness out there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we focus on is our national delivery plan, which we published back in May of this year. And it's centered around 6 missions, and mission 1 is really around that raising awareness piece, because we think it's so important that across government, across industry, and across the charity sector, people are aware that or people are made more aware that just because the pandemic is over doesn't mean that some of those issues with respect to the digital divide have been resolved. It's an ongoing issue that needs urgent attention. Annie, can I come to you in terms of how should people engage? What should they do to help combat this problem?
I think certainly from the digital divide, one thing we were discussing last night at the event was actually the sort of avoidance of the issue. And then actually probably we have that a lot in Bath as well, is actually that can't be happening here. It's not happening here. Look at the city with kind of a blinkered view. So I think that is a responsibility of us as individuals, organizations that are aware of the problem and want to solve it, to really drive awareness of that. And then I think I would just be encouraging people to kind of find their local Tech4Good communities if there isn't one, or it doesn't feel like it's the right fit for what you want to solve, or what action you want to see happen, then start one. As I said, there is a network that is there to really help get new community groups off the ground really quickly. We've built shared resources, and there's funding in there to get new groups started as well, and a lot of support from those of us that are already in that community. And what I'd say is, like, the first retreat that we had a couple of years ago, there was probably maybe 12 of us there that kind of run communities that have been going for quite a while. The last event, there was probably 35 people there, and some of them just have their own nuances and own focus. It's not just Tech4Good is Southwest is an example of probably a very, very broad one that's also about almost being a sort of umbrella conversation. So yeah, get involved.
Great, excellent. Okay, so I think with that, we'll draw the webinar to a close. So I think all that's left is to thank our amazing panelists. Thank you, Annie and Chris, for all of their insights. I think really thought-provoking contributions. So very grateful. Thank you also to everybody that joined today, and for all your great comments and questions. So we will be circulating a version of the slide deck to people. And yeah, if people have any other comments or any other questions, please do get in touch. You know, we're keen to hear from you. So with that, thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.